act, but the Zoom people can
Got it.
enter questions and stuff. So
Okay.
we get people on both.
Okay.
We are now streaming live on YouTube.
So who wished they'd invested in Zoom a year ago?
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started.
We'll wait for people to shuffle in.
Sure, absolutely. Hey, Maggie. Maggie.
Where's Skip?
Skip is downstairs on the couch with Jim. The boys. The girls
Oh,
are
yeah.
up, the boys are down. Oh, what's trouble? What's the trouble? You want to go down too? Maggie doesn't want to be here. Can I get up and go and be right
Oh,
back
yeah.
in 1 second?
Yep.
All right. What you doing? What's wrong? Okay. Oh, that's a good girl. She must miss her boyfriend. Oh God, they're
Are
so
they?
in love. I mean, they'll play in the living room and it's like, get a room. It's just like, God, they're so cute.
Are they from the same letter?
No, oh no, she's just turned 8, which is shocking to me. He'll be 4 in March. He's actually from Ireland.
Oh,
So yeah, no, they have no relationship at all. Yeah. But they're best buddies.
well, that's great. Oh, here we go. Okay, are we ready? Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Science on Tap, our Zoom edition. Thank you for coming. My name is Susan Knight, and Science on Tap is an example of the Wisconsin idea, the idea that the boundaries of the university are the boundaries of the state. And our partners in Science on Tap include the Minocqua Public Library, UW Kemp Natural Resources Station, UW Trout Lake Station, and the Lakeland Badger chapter of the Wisconsin Alumni Association. And in the past, we've presented at the Minocqua Brewing Company, and they're closed now, but we hope they will be open again soon. And Science on Tap is supported with a grant from the Brittingham Fund to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So just a reminder that there are 3 ways to watch us. You can watch on Zoom, as probably most of you are right now. And this is, if you're on Zoom, you can actually ask questions and interact. So that's a good place to be. You can also watch on YouTube, but it's not interactive. So you can't really watch. I mean, you can watch, but you can't ask any questions. Both options have links on our website. So either one should work for you. Or you can watch later because we do archive our presentations, and a couple of weeks after we show it, you should be able to see it. And you can go to our website and see, look at archived videos and see everything we've been doing. And I think next month is our 8th anniversary. So we've been going for a while now. Pretty cool. Okay, and our next event, speaking of next month, our next event is on February 3rd, and we're going to have Professor Tom Vogt of UW La Crosse talking about fungi. So really looking forward to that one.
Cool.
Now, before I introduce our speaker tonight, can everyone please find their chat button and let us know where you're calling from? And we'll see if that... So we have Rhinelander, Colorado, Fitchburg, Wisconsin, Lake Tomahawk, Minneapolis, Presque Isle. We've got a lot of people on. I think Star Lake, Winchester, Wisconsin, Illinois, Fitchburg, St. Germain, Minocqua, lots and lots of people. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you for letting us know where you are. Okay, now if you have any tech problems through the evening, please use the chat that you just did, and you'll be in touch with Noah, who will straighten you out. But we're going to do questions on the Q&A, but I'll get back to that in just a minute. Okay, so tonight we are delighted to have Dr. Tricia McConnell speaking about dog and pet behavior. Dr. Patricia McConnell is an ethologist, that is, someone who studies animal behavior. And Dr. McConnell has consulted with pet owners for over 25 years and about serious behavioral issues and problems. She taught the biology and philosophy of human-animal relationships in the Department of Integrative Biology at UW-Madison for 25 years. And she's spoken around the world about canine behavior and training. Dr. McConnell's the author of 11 books on training and behavioral problems, including The Other End of the Leash, which has been translated into 14 languages, For the Love of a Dog, and Tales of Two Species. Her newest book, The Education of Will, is a memoir focusing on healing from trauma in both people and dogs. Patricia and her husband live with their working border collies, Skip and Maggie. We just saw Maggie for a minute, along with a very spoiled flock of sheep. Okay, so here's your trivia question about Tricia. Tricia and her husband took a trip to Florida. One of the things they really wanted to do was to see manatees. So they rented a small boat and got to see these really cool animals just offshore. When they were ready to head home, they hit the gas, and the people sitting at the nearby beachside bar started laughing hysterically. What had they done? A, the boat was in reverse and they couldn't stop going in tight backward circles. Or B, they managed to become perched on top of a coral reef and they had to wait for high tide so they could get off. Or C, they forgot they had dropped an anchor, and when they came to the end of the anchor line, they almost fell overboard. Okay, so everybody, here's your quiz up on the screen for dog behavior. And if you would check off which one you think, and in a few minutes, we will see how everybody voted. Are we ready to keep going? Okay. All right. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. McConnell, and she's going to do some readings and talk to us a little bit, and then we'll get back to you about the trivia questions. So Dr. McConnell, take it away.
Oh, thanks for having me. What a treat to be here. I was in Minocqua for this 5 years ago, and it was just a highlight. So yeah, hopefully another 5 years we'll be up and everything will be open and life will be back to normal. So thanks for having me. It's a great treat. I thought what I'd do, given the world that surrounds us at the moment, given the day that we are living in right now, I thought reading some sections about love and our love of dogs might be a therapeutic and good thing to do. And also scientifically, I just find it a really interesting topic because our bond with dogs is, if you think about it, it's a biological miracle. I mean, it's really an amazing thing that you don't see. It's just very rare and it's miraculous. So I'm going to read for, I lost my glasses, by the way, so hopefully I can see what I'm actually reading. So I'm going to read from For the Love of a Dog, which is a book about emotions in people and dogs. And some of you may know that my first border collie was a dog named Luke. In 1992, I fell in love with a dog named Luke. I brought him home from a herding dog trial one chilly October evening, not sure whether I'd keep him, not sure I wanted another dog. A gangly adolescent, Luke had been a disappointment to his first owner, who reported that he wouldn't come when called and failed his first herding lesson. I'd had my eye on him ever since he was a pup and had told the owner to let me know if she ever decided to sell him. When she did, I had more dogs than I needed, but every time I saw Luke, something clicked inside, as if I'd finally found the combination to an old padlock I carried around unopened. I took one last look at his bright, expectant face, wrote out a check, and drove him home through the red and orange hills of a Midwestern autumn. By sundown of the next day, Luke and I had fallen in love. I don't know any other way to describe it. I say fallen in love with the knowledge that eyes will roll, lips will purse, and heads will shake. It seems that people either get it or not. Like the yes-no simplicity of digital computers, the world sorts us into those people who have been deeply moved by an animal, or those who can take them or leave them. I learned to censor myself, to test the waters by volunteering some platitude like, yep, he's a great dog, Luke, instead of a deeper, more complex attempt to express how much I loved him. I am buoyed by the knowledge that I am not alone. People come up to me at seminars and in Minocqua 5 years ago, eyes full and bright with the beginnings of tears, and tell me they had a dog like Luke. Forever dogs, we call them, the canine loves of our lives who expand our hearts and fill our souls as nothing else ever has. For 12 and a half years, Luke and I danced together, sometimes so clear and so close to each other, it was like moving as one, sometimes stumbling over each other's toes. We were each other's soulmates, colleagues, and best friends. I described him to everyone who would listen as my 1 in a million dog. And for reasons I don't understand, he seemed to love me as much as I loved him. So that's one more. It's more good. Are we good? All right. So I'll do one more. Well, I'll do 2 more if we have time. If not. So this is also about Luke. Luke was my first border collie. Luke placed the damp, this is from the other end of the leash. Luke placed the damp, sandy thing in my hand as if it were a precious egg. He'd never done that before, and he's never done it since. Keep away is his favorite game, and although he reliably drops his toys to a quiet word, you can tell that it goes against his nature. Luke hogs the ball every second that he can and has learned not to bug Pip, another one of my dogs, border collies, if she should get it first. But this time, he eased the object into my hands with a kind of serious nobility and then backed up and sat quietly before me. First, I didn't even know what it was, just a wet handful of brown. Gradually, I began to distinguish tiny paws and a tail. My hands held a half-drowned chipmunk, chest pumping with shallow breaths, eyes screwed shut, tiny paws clenched. It had just rained 5 inches in 12 hours. There was whitewater in the front yard and a waterfall by the garage. The chipmunk must have gotten caught in the flooding that overtook the farm in the drama of a summer thunderstorm. Chipmunks are generally bad guests on Wisconsin farms, chewing holes in sacks of grain, nesting in boxes of old photographs in the attic. But this gasping little mammal found her way into my heart. So I cleaned her off and warmed her up. In a half an hour, she was warm and dry, and not at all pleased to be in a box on my kitchen counter. Luke and I watched her skitter out of the garage when I let her out. I will never know why Luke picked her up and handed her to me ever so gently. He was not being predatory, nor was he being playful. You can't miss his intense play stalk when we play ball. His head and tail drop while he crouches in anticipation of the chase. But this time he didn't look playful or predatory. He was quiet and serious, but soft-eyed, moving as if he was in slow motion. What was he thinking when he eased her into his jaws and presented her to me like a newborn baby at a hospital? Was he saving her life? The idea seems foolish to me. My other border collies hunt ground-dwelling mammals with a passion. But then Luke pays little attention to mice and baby rabbits and is always gentle with baby lambs. Luke has risked his own life to save mine, although I'll never know if he was purposely saving me from danger or just getting in on the action. Perhaps he found the chipmunk confusing, out of place, and was handing her to me to get things back to normal. I don't know. You already know that Luke is one of my best friends. After a hard morning loading sheep onto the truck, Luke and I sit together with a closeness born of hard work, mutual respect, and some undefinable connection that he and I have always had. But I'll never know what was on his mind when he picked up that soggy chipmunk. It's just not the kind of thing that dogs and humans can discuss. Perhaps there's a level of understanding, though, that's not necessary between us and dogs. Perhaps there's a value that's in a relationship that strives to share what it can and that accepts deeply and peaceably its limitations. I like that Luke is not a small, furry, four-legged human. I'm blessed with many human friends, and I don't need dog as substitutes. Some of what I get from my dogs is similar to what I get from my human relationships. But just as I can't discuss world peace with my dogs, there's something I get from them that I can't get from my other human friends. And I'm not even sure what it is, but it's deep and primal and good. It has something to do with staying connected to the earth and to sharing the planet with other living things. We humans are in such a strange position. We're still animals whose behavior reflects that of our ancestors, yet we are unique, unlike any other animal on earth. Our distinctiveness separates us and makes it easy to forget where we came from. Perhaps dogs help us remember the depth of our roots, reminding us, the animals at the other end of the leash, that we may be special, but we are not alone. No wonder we call them our best friends. So why don't I quit there? Later, I could read a little something else, but there might be some questions out there. I don't know. How are we doing, Susan?
I think we've got a few questions. All right.
All right.
So, all right. Now,
Oh, and I should actually, this is Science on Tap, right?
This is Science on Tap.
In the Minocqua Brewing bar. I don't know if it's called a bar, tavern, whatever, which is a wonderful establishment. So in honor, I have my own drink here. I hope you all out there also do too. So cheers to all of you, and here's to Science on Tap.
All right, thank you very much. And we will have questions, but I'm not seeing them on Q&A. So my little tech support people, are they in chat instead? I'm sorry.
No,
I am
okay.
out. I am out of order. I am discombobulated tonight. Okay. All right.
We're all discombobulated today.
We are. Okay. So anyway, thank you very much, Tricia. That was, I was having a hard time keeping my eyes from tearing up. That was really great. Okay. So let's find out about the bar patrons and what happened down in Florida. So here is the question was, Trish and her husband took a boat trip to Florida. And what did they do when they hit the gas and everybody started laughing? Okay, so we had 10% think the boat was in reverse and they couldn't stop going in tight circles. Okay. 12% thought they managed to become perched on top of a coral reef and they had to wait for the high tide. Most of you were not fooled because the right answer is indeed C. They forgot they had dropped the anchor, and when they came to the end of the anchor line, they almost fell overboard. I'll bet, given that this is a lakey kind of environment, I'll bet a lot of people have done that up here. So they knew that from experience.
The experience of places that have a lot of water comes through. It was, and that was just the end of it. It was a Lucille Ball, Keystone Cops, ridiculous scenario. We could hear the people in the bar laughing. So there's a line of people in this bar and we could hear them laughing, but they started laughing because we were in a boat that wasn't fast enough to beat the current. So we kept getting pushed into the area where you cannot go, where the manatee boat can't go because of the manatees. Our boat got wrapped in the line, right? The buoy line to mark the area. Then we got wrapped in the line. It went on and on and on. Yeah, it was, we could hear people, they laughed they fell off their stools.
Well, you provided the afternoon entertainment.
It was a social service.
That is very considerate of you. I'm sure they wanted to hire you for the next day.
Right.
Okay. I can't hear you, Noah. Yep. Okay. So now we're going to open it up for questions, and it wouldn't be Science on Tap without your questions. So we find your Q&A button down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And this is the window where you should write in your questions. And a few of us will be monitoring the questions. So I will receive the questions and I will ask Tricia and she will answer. So here we go. We've got several questions already. Okay. How do you limit barking between pack members?
Oh, did you have to start with the hardest one first?
Yeah.
Did you just have to?
Of course I did.
It's tough. I mean, there's no way around it. It's really tough. And our instincts are the worst possible thing, because what we tend to do as humans is tell our dogs to stop barking, and then they don't. And so we raise our voices. And so they're going bark, bark, bark. And we go like, enough, be quiet, bark, 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 bark. And then we get louder, be quiet, no, no. And it's like a bark fest, because they're barking and then we're barking. And why would they not just think we've joined in the barking? Because as the questioner mentioned, it's a pack activity. So the best I can tell you, I mean, Maggie's a big barker, and I've worked on it very hard, and she's way better. She's not perfect, but she's way better. So in general, what I do, first of all, it's got to be one dog at a time. You can't do 2 dogs or 3 dogs. You got it. So put all the dogs away except one. And then basically create a situation that you have control over that they're going to bark at. So for example, you can just knock on your door. I can knock on the door from the inside and Maggie will start barking, right? So, but I can stop the knocking. So I have control over the stimulus, right? So you're controlling the stimulus, knock on the door or whatever sets your dog off, and then stop it right away. And then they might still keep barking a little bit. So I went right to Maggie with the best piece of food possible in my hand, maybe a piece of cooked chicken or something, which always gets her attention. And I lure her away from the door until she's turned away from the door and looking at me. And I say, enough, good girl. And then I give her the treat. And then I give her things to do because she wants to go back to the door and bark some more, right? Because she's not done. So I give her things to do, and she knows lots of tricks. So it's Maggie lie down, Maggie twist, Maggie swirl, Maggie high five. You know, I ask her to do things, keep her busy. If they don't know tricks, you can use toys, whatever, keep them busy, keep their mind off of it, lots of reinforcement. So you have to do that over and over and over again. So that's one, and it can help tremendously. Maggie still barks sometimes when I don't want her to. But Maggie also knows, as did many of my clients' dogs after we worked together, is, would you go to your room, please? Really nicely. You're not yelling. You're not mad. This is a trick. This is a fun little circus game that they play. So you teach them when there's no stimulation, no distractions. Go to your crate, and you run to the crate with them, and you throw a piece of food in the crate, and they're like, ooh, that was fun. And then you do it like 5 times in a row. And then you gradually start doing it when there's a little tiny bit of a distraction. So often when people come to the door and Maggie starts barking, I will just say, Maggie, go to your crate. And she'll run right in there. Sometimes she's barking as she runs in there, but then she's in another room. She's away from the door. She calms down, things get quiet. And that helps a lot with the pack, just sort of keep arousal down, because they do stimulate each other, as we all know. As a social species, we can all incite each other, right? So those are my 2 best ideas. They take some time, they take some training. One last thing I would say is, please be careful with bark collars. If not, never ever use them. They can cause lots of problems. Very often you can teach your dogs to be afraid of visitors, because every time the visitor comes, they bark and they get a shock. So be very, very careful with that kind of device.
Okay, great. All makes sense. Okay, here's a question. How do I train my 13-week-old golden retriever pup to not chew on my pant leg?
Oh, what? You have a golden retriever puppy that wants to chew? I'm shocked. I don't understand. How would that happen? Yeah, I mean, so many puppies are like that. Border collies are horrible. All of the lab retriever, you know, they're really, really bitey. So this is a little easier than barking. That's the good news. So there are a couple of things you can do. One is, when they bite on your pant leg, you can pretend that they bit you and they hurt you. So if you can teach yourself to make a yelp like a puppy who's been hurt or startled or played with too roughly by another litter mate. So when they bite on your pant leg, you yelp. You make a yelp like a seal. So you basically go really fast, really short onset. So it sort of bursts out of your mouth. And what it does is it gets a startle response. So you go, and your puppy often, not always, but often will go, what? Just for a millisecond. Well, just for a half a second, not a millisecond, but just, huh? In that really short period of time, you are ready because you are prepared, because you thought this through and you have a toy in your pocket. You have a chew toy in your pocket. So you go, and they look at you and you shake the toy and you show it to them and you hand it to them or you throw it for them if they'll go after it. Sometimes young puppies are like, whoa, where did it go? So you make sure they're engaged with it. So that can work really well with most dogs. And you just do that over and over again. If your yelp isn't having any effect, then don't keep doing it. They'll just habituate to it. Don't keep doing it. There's a percentage of dogs who get stimulated when you do that. They get even more, oh, that was arousing and that was exciting. So if it's not working after 3 times, don't do it anymore. And what you want to be doing is constantly is chew on this, chew on this. So if, say, when you walk across the room, your puppy is sort of attacks your leg, figure it out. Let's say, okay, I only had to walk 2 steps for my puppy to bite at my leg. So I'm going to take 1 step and then I'm going to redirect him to this, to what I want him to chew on. So it's basically always chew on this, chew on this, chew on this. And it takes always having a toy in your pocket. Make sure it's a toy your puppy likes. They don't like all of them. The more expensive they are, the less they like them, I guarantee you. So just make sure you're prepared. And again, it's chew on this, not on that. So,
Great.
And good luck with your puppy. How fun to have a 13-week-old puppy. That's so cool.
That is fun. Okay. So I am a little confused as to where number
question
3. Okay. How do we deal with a counter surfer?
Yes. Yes. The counter surfers of the world. One might argue I'm not the best person to ask, since at one point in her life, Maggie got up on a counter. We had house guests. I had put a double chocolate cake on the kitchen counter. I was really good at not having things left on the counter, except I got distracted saying goodbye to these guests. Well, I spent the New Year's Day in the emergency room several years ago. So one thing you do is not what I did, which is pay attention to what you're leaving on your counter. It's a lot easier to prevent than it is to turn around. So that's one thing to think about. For that 13-week-old puppy, be really thoughtful about that. So nothing ever is going to come from the counter. And one of the things that a couple of trainers have advised people, and I didn't used to do this, but I think there's some wisdom in that. Don't ever feed your dog from the counter. So like you're making their dinner or something and you have a little extra scrap, and then you hand them food from the counter. Basically try and make it like food from the counter. You never get that. You can make their dinner at sort of X place, but then you put it down in their bowl. So try and avoid that. Teach them all good things happen underneath and low. And again, so I'm always trying to teach them what you do want rather than what you don't want. So if they come up to a counter and they're sort of like sniffing a little bit, you might say, for example, a lot of people do this when you're making dinner. Teach your dog to go lay on a mat. It's a wonderful, wonderful trick to teach your dog. You put a nice comfy mat somewhere where it's not in the highway. Dog's not going to get tripped over. And you teach them when there's no distractions, nothing going on. It's really not that hard to do with most dogs. You have to be patient. It can take a while, but you teach them, lie down and stay, and then you get treats, and you give them treats for staying there like every 2 seconds at first, and you gradually, slowly over a period of 2 months, ask them, I want you to lie down and stay there for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And when you get to that point, they often will just go to sleep. So that helps a lot because you're teaching them to go somewhere else while you're preparing food and while there's food up on the counter. So that can help. So you also you don't let your dog loose. If they are big enough to get up on the counter, you don't let them loose. If you see them up on the counter, this is the trickiest part for me to give generic advice to, because it depends so much on the dog. There are people who argue that you should in all of life with all of your dogs at any period, only use positive reinforcement. Never, ever, ever give a dog a correction. I don't know how you get through life doing that. I'm not one of those people. I think we need to be extremely careful about corrections and punishment. But I mean, I use corrections with Maggie. She'll start to eat cat poop. She loves cat poop, right? What dog doesn't? And so I have outdoor cats. So Maggie is about to eat a cat poop, and I'll go like, Maggie. And that's a correction, basically, because I'm trying to stop her from doing something that she's about to do. And then if she'll come to me for a while, I reinforced her like, good girl, good girl, good girl. So if they sort of are looking at the counter, or say, even if they jump up on the counter, depending on the dog and how soft they are, I might go like Maggie, or I'd go like, and then I'd again ask them to do what I want them to do. So those are some ideas. Part of that advice depends on your dog and how soft they are and sort of how you are and what your household is like. But prevention is the key here. The more you can prevent, the better.
Great. Okay. I have a 7-month-old puppy who still bites a lot. She's an Australian Shepherd mix. I'm not sure if this is part of the herding instinct or how to stop it. She can go from snuggling with you one moment and biting the next. Also, just seems to want something in her mouth a lot. Other than that, she's great. We have tried the ouch, ignoring her, saying no, etc.
Oh, that needs a house call. I mean, the easy part of your question to answer is no, it's not. I mean, yes, it's part of an instinct in that that's what dogs do with their mouths, right? They bite things, and puppies chew and dogs chew. Dogs are very mouthy. Dogs often, when they play together, like when Maggie and Skip play together in the living room, they do all kinds of little, mouth play, little mouth bitey stuff. Very, very inhibited, very gentle, very soft. I was just reading an article in Bark Magazine, which is a great magazine, by the way. You can get it online. It's a really great magazine, but it was some of the things that dogs would never understand, couldn't possibly understand about human behavior. And one is like, why don't we bite each other more? Why don't we bite when we play? Because dogs do that. So in that sense, it's instinctual, but in the other sense, tons of dogs do that. It's not a herding dog thing. It's a dog thing. What I would want to know about this dog, and this is when it's sort of tricky to answer these kind of questions, without working with your dog, is what I want to know about this dog is sort of what is the emotion, what is the motivation behind it? Is this dog, sometimes dogs, like they're really cuddly and then they'll get bitey because they get frustrated or they get over aroused. So over arousal often could be. So I've had a lot of cases where people were like petting their dog. Cats do this a lot, by the way. They'll come up like, pet me, pet me, pet me, pet me, right? And you pet them and they're like, oh, this is wonderful. I love this. And on the 5th stroke, they'll start biting you because the 5th stroke was one too many. And you can get the same thing with dogs is, you're petting them, you're cuddling with them, you're talking with them, and they're like, oh, this is so fun. And then they just sort of reach this point where they get a little over aroused. And now they have all that energy and they have to get it out. Or they're frustrated and they're trying to tell you something. And it might not be a very nice thing to say. I don't know. So I don't know your dog. I'm assuming these are not serious bites. All right. So I'm assuming this is just sort of like mouthy puppy biting stuff, except when they're 7 months old, that can, it's a concern that it can become serious. So obviously yelping is not working. I think what I would do for a while is what I would try is the second it happens, if you're not standing, I would stand up, I would fold my arms, I would turn away. I would probably say something like, oh, like this disgust. Dogs get disgust. It's so, I wish there was more research on this because I think dogs get disgust. They make a face of disgust just like we do. They have put perfume or cologne or something on your hand and let your dog sniff it. And usually they'll go like, ugh, right? They hate that smell. They think it's horrible. So I just found it really useful. So with this, the first thing I would try with this dog is I would go like, ugh, and I would turn my body away and turn my head away and fold my arms and just look away from them. And very often what dogs will do when you do that is they'll just sort of like, what? And then they'll go away. Now, if this dog keeps after you, if you're a good actress or an actor and you can do that really well, this dog sort of keeps after you, I would call in a trainer. I would get in somebody to help you, because there's so many different reasons a dog could be doing that. And at 7 months of age, that could lead to trouble. And especially, that kind of breed, a lot of these dogs, the cattle dogs, the Aussies, they were bred to move animals that weigh 1,000 pounds, right? They're pretty pushy. They're pretty darn pushy. 7 months is also, it's adolescence. It's a really difficult time period for dogs as it is for people. So that might have a lot to do with it too. So the other thing I'd look at is how much mental exercise is your dog getting and how much physical exercise. So I would, if you were my client, I would ask a lot about, exactly what's happening in this dog's life. And it might be getting enough physical exercise, but it might not be getting enough mental exercise. So teach lots and lots of tricks. So that's some ideas for you. Just keep thinking about, one of the great things about tricks is just keep thinking about I don't want my dog to do this anymore. Think about, what do I want my dog to do? So when I get up, I want my dog to go get a toy. I want my dog to go to the door. I want my dog to lie down. I want my dog to look at me lovingly, right? So always be thinking about, what do I want my dog to do, and use that to replace what you don't want. That makes sense?
Sure does. It's great. Okay. Here's another question. Is there a correlation between the size of the dog and the behavior, or is it more breed or environmentally related?
Oh, I wish I could talk to the questioner, because the question, is there a correlation between the size and the behavior? I'm wondering what behavior, what behavior are we talking about? Very often when people ask that, and I don't know, whoever asked that, if you're listening, please clarify your question, because I would love to hear more. So tell us more about what kind of behavior you're talking about. Very often when people talk about size, they're asking about exercise. And it's actually, if anything, there's a reverse correlation half the time. Some of the little dogs are so high energy, they need tons of exercise. Now, you can exercise them in smaller areas, but some of the terriers, they need lots and lots of exercise, mental as well as physical. There are others that need less, like a Cavalier, a King Charles Cavalier. They were literally bred to be lap dogs. It's one of the only dogs, one of the few dogs that I know of that was literally bred to live in your lap, and actually to keep your hands warm when you were in the carriage in Paris. So that, and possibly some people argue to attract the fleas from your body, because fleas like dogs better than people, but people in France were covered in fleas when Cavaliers were first started to be bred. But so, Cavaliers don't need as much exercise, but a little terrier does, right? Some of the really big dogs need very little, and one of the most sort of ironic size and exercise related stories, I think, are greyhounds. Greyhounds, they're sort of like lions in that they need to run really, really hard 3 times a week. And the rest of the time, they're on the couch, they're fine. Border Collies need to be using their brain all the time, not all the time, but every day. They need exercise every day, right? So do Aussies, so do cattle dogs, so do a lot of retriever, Labradors, a lot of the hunting dogs. The medium-sized dogs in general need the most exercise, in my opinion. And some of the bigger ones need the least, ironically. So if whoever asked that question is still listening, I hope you are, please clarify that question because I would love to hear more about what you meant by behavior.
Okay, we have a clarification. Actually, the size question clarification. I meant all behavior in general, but also what you hear of being called small dog syndrome.
Oh, okay. So thanks for that clarification. I think what she means by small dog syndrome is probably related to the fact that there are a lot of small dogs who are snappier than others. As a matter of fact, some of the highest bite rates are actually from very small dogs. Chihuahuas have a really high bite rate, surprisingly. Some of the small terriers have a really high bite rate. And James Serpel, who has done some wonderful work on dog behavior and human-animal relationships, look him up. He's a great researcher. James Serpel did a big study, and what he found was that the highest bite rates were indeed in smaller dogs. But his argument, and I think it's a really good one, was like, of course it is, because they're so vulnerable. We forget how tiny they are. They're living in this Lilliputian world where we're monsters, right? And they're tiny and we loom over them and people pick them up all the time, which many of them absolutely despise and hate. And wouldn't you, being snatched up in the air by this monster all the time. They're on defense a lot. And so that's sometimes what people mean by small dog syndrome. The other way I've heard people define that is small dogs just being sort of spoiled and just not doing what you want and sort of getting everything they want because they're so darn cute. I actually had a Cavalier. Some of people who are watching know Tootsie, who passed away last year. Cavalier, King Charles Cavalier. And somebody asked me once, she said, "Aren't you giving her small dog privileges?" And I said, "Yep, I am," because that's why I got her. I had Willie, I had Maggie, I had 2 border collies who needed a lot of attention and a lot of training for sheepdog competitions and just for being good dogs, because, if you don't train border collies, they go crazy or drive you crazy, one or the other. And I really wanted a dog to sit on the couch with me that I could pet, that I didn't have to put a massive amount of energy into doing lots and lots and lots of training. And so somebody said, isn't she getting small dog privileges? And I was like, yes, she is. But because she was so dear and sweet and docile, it didn't matter. She did everything I needed her to do, and she was absolutely delightful. So yeah, I think the other thing with size is that people do tend to take larger dogs to training more just because they know a large dog who's out of control is just more of a problem. You can pick up a small dog, and you can walk them on a leash even if they don't want to go because they only weigh 10 pounds. You can't walk a 90-pound dog who doesn't want to go. So I think they do get less training than they need sometimes.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Now, would you talk about which emotions you think dogs and humans experience most similarly?
Oh, I love that question. What a fun question. Here's the answer. This is the book about emotions in people and dogs. And so there is general consensus among the scientific community that because of the way our brains are structured and because of the way they function, because of our hormonal function, because of our neurological functions and our neurotransmitters, basically mammals, at least, probably other animals, without question, I would argue, but without question, mammals experience fear. It's absolutely one of the most primal emotions. There's just no question about it. And it makes good sense. I mean, fear is about keeping you alive, right? Pretty good adaptive quality for fear. Interestingly enough, to me anyway, along with fear, hand in hand with fear is anger. If you look at the way the brain is structured, there's an almond-shaped structure in your brain called the amygdala, and it's often called, somewhat simplistically but helpfully in some ways, the center of fear and rage. And so you can stimulate one part of it and you get super fearful reactions. Just you could terrorize an animal, which regrettably, I'm sorry to say, has actually been done. But that is how we learned, how it works, basically by stimulating that part of the brain. You can have a cat this is one of the things they did, terrified a cat who was in a cage with a mouse. The mouse was fine. The cat was absolutely terrified. You can turn that around and stimulate the cat's amygdala on the other end of it, simplistically, and stimulate rage, and the mouse will attack the cat. So fear and anger, and I think every police person knows this, fear and anger go hand in hand. And that can sometimes be a dangerous combination, but it's very primal. So if there's anything we share with dogs, it's certainly fear. People don't like to think about dogs getting angry. And I think dogs get angry a lot less than people. And there's some reasons for that. If we have time, I can talk about them. But there are dogs who get angry, whether we like it or not. I've seen them. You can see it on their faces. They physiologically, neurologically, and behaviorally do everything that humans do when humans are angry. So it makes most sense. It's the most simple, clean, scientific answer that yes, along with fear, dogs can be angry. Some of the more controversial emotions are things like guilt. And that's where we can get into trouble, because I'm not saying dogs can't ever feel guilty. I don't think they feel guilty in the same way that humans can, because our guilt is wrapped up in such complicated social mores and understanding the past and the future. So I'm not saying they experience guilt like we do, but I think they experience it very, very rarely and very, very little, but we tend to attribute it to dogs often. So people often will say, I know he knows better because I came home and he looked guilty, right? That's not usually guilt, that's appeasement. That's a dog basically saying, you're going to get mad at me. You're going to get mad at me. I don't want you to get mad at me, so I'm appeasing you. It's like, when you go to a restaurant and you say, could I have the sweet potato fries instead of the regular fries? And could I have my burger this way rather, and like, you're sort of like, that waitress is going to get mad at you eventually after a while. So people often forget or don't pay attention to the fact that often misbehavior is motivated by fear, whereas they often attribute guilt to dogs when I don't think it's realistic. So primal ones are guilt or fear and anger. There's a lot of evidence that suggests something akin to happiness and love and joy. Who could say that dogs aren't joyful, right? I mean, who could make that argument that dogs don't experience joy, and that most mammals don't experience joy? So those are the really primal ones that are right there. And we'll just sort of have to wait and see, how much sympathy, how much empathy, when does guilt, when are dogs really guilty ever? Anyway, so there's a lot of science we need to do on canine emotions. What's fun is that people have trained, I'm sure some of you have heard of this, several people have trained dogs to voluntarily lie still in an MRI machine. And if you've ever had an MRI, that's not easy because they're just awful. But they put big headphones on the dogs because MRIs are excruciatingly noisy and aversively so. So they've trained these dogs to lie still and then put them in an MRI and do a functional MRI, which means you can watch their brain change. You can watch what areas of their brain are activated and compare it with the brains of humans. So we can learn a lot more, a whole lot more, just because of this great advance in science and people understanding how to learn about the brains of animals without being abusive and without compromising their welfare. And I think that's probably the biggest scientific advance that I've seen in my field in the last 10 years.
Yeah. Wild. Okay, here's another question. Why is our dog aggressive towards some, but not all dogs?
Oh. Well, if you asked him, sorry. But that leads me to want to ask you a question. Why are there some people who irritate you and some don't? Right? I mean, I don't ask that trying to be flippant, and it's just there's so many different reasons, right? Why you get set off. There's so many different triggers why any individual mammal is going to be set off. And it can be, if it's not a serious problem, it can be sort of fun to try and figure it out. You know, what is the pattern here? Is it always males? Is it always dogs who are one coat color? I've had a lot of clients whose dogs were afraid and therefore sometimes aggressive towards nothing but yellow labs because they were at the dog park and they were attacked or just terrified by a yellow lab, and they don't forget that, right? So so it can be something visual, it can be like color, size, breed. It can be behavior, like, you know, dogs who sort of run up rudely and greet you really rudely. It can be just tail set, you know, is the dog's tail like this and is basically challenging somebody from a bar stool just by their tail set. It can be chemical. It can be, is it just males? Is it just females? Is it females who might be going into heat or have a bladder infection and smell like they're going into heat, which, by the way, is not an uncommon problem. So the trick is to start, if you were my client, what I would do is I would say, start writing down, assuming these aren't serious. Obviously you need to prevent and manage to keep anything being from being serious, but start writing down the pattern, you know, start writing down what was happening, where were we? Were there toys involved? Was there food involved? Was there another dog involved? Was a dog, what was that other dog doing? What did it look like? What sex was it? Do I know? What color was it? So start writing all these details down and trying to see if you can find a pattern. And then if you can find a pattern, you want to start counter conditioning your dog to behave a different way towards this particular trigger, you know, whatever it is. And so the easiest thing to do sort of generically is to teach your dog every time they see another dog. And this is what I did with Willie. Those of you who know and who've read The Education of Will, which is a memoir about me and Willie. Willie is a border collie who came as a puppy as if he'd been in Afghanistan for 3 tours. I mean, he acted like a very traumatized individual. And he was terrified of unfamiliar dogs, just terrified of them. And he would bark just horrifically, really nasty, ugly, scary barking. So I managed it a lot. But I taught him, again, using that method of what do I want him to do? So I started teaching him, every time you see another dog, first I taught him just to look at me on cue. No distractions, no dogs, nothing but me and a piece of chicken. Willie, look. And he would look at me and I would give him a piece of chicken. And so gradually I started doing it when there were other distractions. And eventually I started doing it just when he saw another dog, but that other dog was always far enough away that he wasn't overwhelmed, that he was still able to pay attention to me. So the biggest problem, the biggest failure of this method that people have is that they'll wait until their dog is too aroused and too agitated to even care about a piece of chicken or beef or, you know, cheese or whatever, some food that they really love or a toy that they really love to play with. So so you have to start when I mean, I started with Willie when dogs were 3 blocks away and he would see them and he would tense up and his tail would go up and his mouth would close. And he'd just get tense and I'd like back up 1 step and say, Willie, look. And when he looked at me, I'd say, good. And I gave him a piece of food because he loved food. Eventually I turned it into toys and play. I played tug games with him because that helped relax him and he loved toys. It seemed to relax him more than the food did. So he learned eventually that he didn't have to wait for me to say anything. If he saw another dog coming, he'd just look at me and he'd get something wonderful. And that allowed him to get more and more comfortable being around other dogs. So that's a method a lot of people have used. I describe it in Feisty Fido, a little booklet I wrote about that kind of dog. It's very effective. There have been hundreds, if not thousands, of dogs who've gotten over their problems with other dogs through that. So that's the first thing to try. So good luck, because I know it can be really stressful to have a dog who's aggressive to other dogs, and especially if you haven't found the pattern yet, so good luck. Our paws are all crossed for you.
Okay, one more question. Let's see. I have a new dog who just turned 3 and is extremely sensitive to unfamiliar, loud, sudden noises. So what to do about that?
Yeah, poor baby. So one is I sympathize, because I too am extremely sensitive to loud, unexpected noises. So so there are a couple of things you can do is start, again, counter conditioning. This is basically counter classical conditioning. Remember the classical conditioning where the dog started to salivate when there was a noise from the door opening, somebody coming in to bring meat, they would normally salivate too. So counter classical conditioning in this case is basically teaching your dog, if they hear an unexpected noise, they will internally feel really good and relaxed and happy, because they've learned to pair that unfamiliar or that unexpected noise with something wonderful. So it's not operant conditioning. You're not training a behavior. You're influencing their internal response, and that will change their behavior, right? So start with a very low, the trick is to find something that really makes them happy. So it's like the best food ever, cooked chicken, something they absolutely adore that they almost never get. That's really, really special. So I'll just make a chicken because it's just easy to use an example. So cooked chicken's up here, really high value. Down here is a low level intensity of what scares them. So, and you can do this with anything that scares them, whether it's the vacuum cleaner or a loud noise or people coming to visit. So you start with a really low intensity. So you don't bang your pots together as loud as you can, right? You set up a situation where you have control of the noise. You have a whole lot of treats in your hand. Maybe you do take two pots and you just go clink and then throw a treat. Clink, throw a treat. Clink, throw a treat. Make sure that your dog is not flinching or is not scared. Like, what you want is like you make this little clinking noise, and what you want to see is like, oh, that had no effect on them. And I've had clients say, what's not helping? It's like, yes, it is. Yes, it is. That's where you need to start. So clink, and then you throw treats, and you do that like 3 or 4 sessions, like maybe 10 times a session. And then it's a little louder for the next 3 sessions. And then it's a little louder for the next 3 sessions. And then it's a different kind of noise. So you gradually get them used to it. When there's a loud noise that you haven't put as part of your, because it happens, right? Just loud noises happen. What I would suggest doing is, first of all, model super calm. It's okay to pet your dog. You're not going to make them more fearful. Just you're super calm, and really long, slow, soothing strokes, not pat, 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 but just long, slow, soothing strokes. That's a good guy. Oh, what a good boy. That's a good boy. You okay? You're a good boy. And the only other thing I can say, and this is way more complicated than we can deal with now, but sometimes that kind of hyperreactivity is based on some kind of internal physiology. Sometimes it's based on the food they're eating. Sometimes it's based on other physiological issues. So we don't have time to talk about that now, but first try this counter conditioning, because that's the first thing I try.
All right, great. Okay. What is your favorite part of being a dog trainer? How much do you consider yourself a human trainer rather than a dog trainer?
Oh, that's such a fun question. My favorite part of being a dog trainer was getting to work with my 2 favorite species. And so I'm sort of answering the second part of your question. I love people. I'm an introvert, actually. I need a lot of time by myself, but I just think we're so interesting, just as somebody who, my degree is in basically, I'm a zoologist, and I just find our behavior fascinating. And so I love working with people, and I love dogs. I need them. I need dogs like I need oxygen. And so working with the two of them together and trying to help them solve their miscommunication issues, because that's mostly what it is. I mean, most, misbehavior, disobedience, most of it is just, it's just, what we have here is a problem to communicate, right? Remember that movie? So probably not, because you're probably not as old as I am, but anyway, it used to be a famous line. So I just love trying to help people and dogs and other animals, cats and horses, communicate in a way that enriched their lives, that made both of them happier. I love doing it. And the thing, I don't see clients anymore. What I love now about training is it's so complicated. I never stop learning more. I never stop learning how to be better. I have to forgive myself for not being perfect. I'm so not perfect. I'm so not perfect. But I just try and get better. I try and learn from my mistakes and get better and better and better. And I'm always learning and I'm always growing. And I'm a really curious person. So I love the challenge of that. I'll never be bored. You
Right.
can't ever be bored if you're interested in canine behavior. That's it.
Great. All right. So we have one last question. And what is the most up-to-date reading for laypersons about the origins of dog-human relationships? When I was in class with you, someone took a class with you, it was Budiansky's book. I'm wondering if that's evolved.
Oh, so much has evolved. Oh, I wish I could think of the author's name. I'm so sorry I can't, but you can find it. There was a big article in Smithsonian just a month or two ago that summarized a lot of the new research and discoveries and thinking. And it changes every 2 weeks. I would have to revise my lecture literally every 2 weeks because it just changes over and over and over again. I mean, they keep finding more fossils of dogs in different places. They keep doing more DNA genetic tests of where dogs came from. I mean, if I understand it correctly, there's no question that dogs are derived from wolves, but not the wolves we have here in North America. It just gets more and more complicated and more interesting. So see if you can find that Smithsonian article. It's not a small one. It's a really, really in-depth, big one with tons of references in it. So that should be easy to find. So look that one up because it's a really exciting field right now.
All right. Great. All right. Well, thank you so much. Oh, I'm sorry. We have one last question. Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Okay.
Just wanted to, this is the last question. Okay. Please thank everybody for all of your questions. All right. I'm sorry. I am not doing well tonight. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for sending in your questions. We had great questions tonight. And thanks so much to Dr. Patricia McConnell. Thanks to everyone who participated. And thanks to our sponsors, the Lakeland Badger chapter of the Wisconsin Alumni Association, Minocqua Public Library, UW Kemp Natural Resources Station, and UW Trout Lake Station, and the Brittingham Foundation. Remember, our next Science on Tap will be February 3rd, when we will have Tom Volk of UW La Crosse talking about fungi. And if you want to sign up for email reminders of our events, just go to our website and click on Contact Us and leave your email address. So thank you very much again, Tricia. It was just wonderful to have you again. We'll have you again sooner next time. And we'll see everybody else next month. Okay.